Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 34 of the Carry On with Carrie podcast. Today, I would like to introduce you to Melanie Taylor. She's born and raised in Calgary and proud of it. Melanie completed her bachelor's and graduate degree in social work, specializing in adult mental health and addictions. Melanie works at Exhale Psychology, and she has created a men's informational support group. It's 6 weeks long, and it starts soon. And we're hopeful that we can spread the word and get some other men involved in speaking up and getting in touch with their emotions. Good morning, Melanie. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Carrie. Thanks so much. How are you?
I'm good this morning. It's Sunday, and I get to just do this and talk to you, and I'm excited about that.
Oh, me as well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So we kind of came across each other on Instagram, and you are from Calgary and proud of it. I am up here in Edmonton area, and I'm just wondering what's coming up for you. And I just really wanted to highlight you've got some pretty exciting things coming up.
What I'm really happy to kind of talk about and promote is my men's group that's coming up on January 16th. It's an informational support group for men that focuses on certain topics for the first 45 minutes, and then the last hour is really just a safe space for men to open up and share and support one another. So the registration date for that closes on next Friday, January 12th. There's still a few spots left. I'm really hoping that spreading the word and getting it out there will fill those spots soon.
Absolutely. And even if those few spots don't get taken up this time, it's something for the future that is now people will know about it, right? And
absolutely.
Right. And the response, how has it been, the response? Because that's kind of where we have to get into the nitty-gritty. Men talking about their emotions, their mental health, and actually sharing with other men.
Yeah. The response has been great we've gotten a lot of, likes and comments and shares and all that stuff. And it's a small group, so I've gotten a few registrants already that have expressed interest. I think that it is a big barrier. There aren't a lot of services or supports like this in Calgary right now. So I think we're one of the two groups offered right now in Calgary, specifically for men.
Right.
So there is that barrier of trying to break down, the uneasiness or the stigma around men coming together and talking about things they don't usually talk about. So we're on it. We're trying.
Yes.
But any help is appreciated.
Oh,
for sure.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is I know you mentioned in your bio that you have a son, and I myself have 3 sons. They're all grown up now, but I realized like the sensitivities that males have, and I probably learned that from being a mother to boys, and and the importance of being able to have them open up to myself, to a friend, to a mentor, is huge. And I find it's hard to find a group for them. Like, what can I lead them to?
Yeah, it is difficult. And really having my son and, my partner and I at the time were very, role modeling how to share emotions. We were encouraging him to share emotions. We were doing all the things to really encourage and grow this for him as he was getting older. But it was really, the friend group or other parents or other adults that were kind of joining in on the message around, if it's okay or not to share and to express emotion. And that's where I think the societal pressure around what it means to be a boy or strong or a man really kind of takes over. So that really became prevalent to me early on with my son. And I was like, this has got to change.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and like you mentioned, the boys don't cry. It's amazing. And it's still in our culture.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And as women, we can be stronger, but men aren't being allowed to be more emotional, I guess.
No, they're not. Like I I see quite a few men now in private practice, and I have over the span of my career. And nearly every single one of them was like, we didn't talk about emotions growing up. We weren't allowed to cry. Like, it just wasn't, if we did, we were called names for it. And there was just no person throughout their, growth span, throughout their lifespan, where they felt like they could actually have those conversations. And that's how they end up getting into therapy, essentially, is having a safe space to feel like they can actually talk and share and get things off their chest.
Mm-hmm. And is there a safe, okay, so not safe, but for men, they present differently with emotions. So can you, like, from your experience, give a little bit of insight into how they are different from women?
Yeah, absolutely. Boys and men are often internalizers. So they internalize everything. They don't externalize or verbalize anything that they're actually thinking or feeling. They keep it all bottled up because, again, this is what they're kind of taught and this is how they're raised. And girls are more external. We call them external thinkers, external feelers. So they wear their hearts on the sleeve. They're more prone to have, maybe some maladaptive coping behaviors. And they're much more vocal around what's going on, what they're thinking and feeling. Both are not necessarily a bad thing. There's right. Pros and cons to both. It's just really about striking that balance.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, is for a man to express his feelings, oftentimes because it's a boys don't cry, it comes out as anger.
Absolutely.
And is that okay?
I think the conversation becomes around like healthy ways to express anger, right? So when we look at how is the anger expressed, like a lot of men that I see or talk to, they bottle everything up, and then there's an explosion, which usually comes out as anger, like you mentioned, or it comes out with binge drinking or using substances or domestic violence. Like, this is how it's coming out. So really, what we talk about then is feelings are valid. How you feel is a valid response to what's going on to your situation, but it doesn't mean that it's acceptable or factual. So just redirecting, how do we express feelings? How do we express emotions? So really doing some work around what are some things that kind of help you feel regulated, or what are some things that might help you feel regulated in the moment. And there's some skills that I can always provide around that, around dialectical behavior therapy, around emotional regulation, and then really kind of tapping into healthy things that they can do and in healthy ways they can express.
Right. And so can they expect things like meditation and journaling and all those typical things that you would find in a women's group, for instance?
I certainly, generally how I usually work it is I usually go, what are some things that fill your cup?
Right.
And that's different for everybody, right? So what are some things that you do? They can be people, they can be activities, they can be professionals. What are people and things that kind of put energy into your cup? And then we begin a discussion around that. So I don't really prescribe anything in particular. It's very much on an individual basis.
Okay.
And in the group, we would be having a larger discussion to brainstorm some things that fill their cup. Some men, I like to go work on my car for an hour, or I really like going to the gym for an hour, or whatever that's going to look like is really what we'll kind of explore and discuss and share.
Yeah. And that's a good, they do have different interests than we might have some very similar. And for those that maybe are in touch with that side of themselves, I guess it's also a safe place to open up about that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really want to encourage men sharing everything, but especially what are the things they do that contribute and kind of fill that cup for them and give them some joy and the pleasure.
Mm-hmm. You also, I myself, I'm 2 years sober. And that's partly why I started this, was to get, to give back when I can, what I can, and just to share other people's perspectives on healing and all that good stuff, whatever you can do to get it done. And can you give us a bit of background into your addictions work?
Yeah. So I started in this field about 14 years ago, and I started as a frontline social worker. So I was in one of the very first like housing projects, um, which was Housing First, and there was concurrent disorders such as mental health and substance abuse. So for the bulk of my career, it has been mental health and addiction. So, I've supported individuals with alcoholism, meth addiction. Like it's really been a pretty wide gamut of what I've supported. And oftentimes they go hand in hand, mental health and substance abuse, right?
Absolutely,
so a lot of the times there's self-medication, which is a big thing. Not being able to cope in other ways, not knowing or having the tools to do that. So the approach that I've adopted and take is a very harm reduction. I don't really, the cold turkey method, let's say, is not something that I prescribe. I'm very much like, let's talk about the harm that you're causing and let's talk about decreasing that in ways that make sense to you and to your own journey.
Right.
So that's certainly been kind of my background has been pretty extensive in terms of working with people with substance abuse.
Right. And do you mainly work with men in that respect, or are you kind of all over the map with it? Both sexes, is there one more than the other? How does that present itself?
I'd say it's pretty evenly split.
Yeah.
I think now with the women that I see and the demographic that I see, the wine culture is really prevalent right now. Like, oh, I just have a couple glasses every night. And it's like, well, maybe we should talk about that.
Yeah,
like,
that's how I mom.
Because alternative. Yeah, totally. That's how I mom. That's exactly the messaging and language, and it's so prevalent on social media, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go and have a couple glasses of wine, and this is mom time. And conversely, if a man were to do that, alarm bells would be ringing, right? Like, right. Oh God, he drinks every night. Like that's not a good thing. And so it presents differently that way. But I would say it's pretty evenly split in terms of them struggling with addiction.
And the correlation between mental health and addiction, absolutely. And how then what's your strongest advice to somebody who is giving up a substance and moving forward in a healthy manner and dealing with the emotions that come up that you used to mask, the things that you used to be able to hide from? And what are some of the strategies? Like, I know it's not as simple as here are some strategies, but sometimes it is that simple.
So really it's about meeting that person where they're at in terms of what they want to see for their substance use. So if they're like, I just want to decrease, so I only drink on the weekends, I want to have 1 glass of wine instead of 4. So I really just start there. So what are you envisioning for your substance use here? Like, what are you wanting to achieve? And then the planning really begins around that. Right. So how do we decrease use? How do we do it in a safe way? What are the measures that we can take to keep you safe if and when you are using? And then it becomes, let's talk about why the use, right? Like, I don't know, are you familiar with Gaber Mate?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and he says, not why the substance use, but why the pain.
Right.
So what's going on that is causing or, bringing you to the point where you feel like you need to drink or use substances? So let's talk about why.
Yeah.
So let's reduce the harm, and then let's talk about what's really going on, and let's come up with some skills and tools and strategies to help with that, so that naturally the harm starts to just decrease to where you want to be with your goals.
Right. And yeah, that's exactly what it is in a nutshell. It's how do you deal with the rest of your life as a sober alcoholic is what I do some meetings. I'm not an AA regular, but I do try to get to some when I can. And, the biggest thing for me and it's true for everything that I've in my life, is you can only get through this moment. You can only be, it's 24 hours today. And what can I get through today?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your experience do you have any support groups that you would recommend or that you would?
Yeah, in terms of support groups, I think what I I always mention AA just because it is so well known and, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I also always recommend the one for families. I'm having a brain fart. Thank you,
yeah.
Al-Anon, for family members, because I actually have a special interest in supporting families that are living with, family members or loved ones that are dealing with addiction or mental health. So I think that's always a good stepping stone for them to kind of hear other stories, hear what other families are struggling with. And then support group wise from there, I'm not aware of any other that are really prevalent in Calgary. I see them pop up every once in a while that I kind of keep my eye on, but I don't think there's like an ongoing support group outside of AA that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I know. I think there's a few popping up like online and social media, and that's great too, because for some people they don't maybe want to get, go into a room and talk to other people about it. They just want to experience their own healing and their own way of doing it, and that's totally fine as long as you're doing it in some way. As long as it's healthy.
Exactly.
Right? So can you explain a little bit about what got you interested in social work, like your early life? I know you mentioned you had some maybe challenges early on in life. I don't know if you're comfortable sharing about that.
Sure. Yeah, there's a certain what got me into social work honestly was I became a social worker very early on in my family. At about 10, I remember starting to manage other people's problems and emotions in my family because I'm the fourth of 5 children. And my parents were divorced, so there was that. Right. But also there were some challenges with my sisters. My oldest sister, unfortunately, was in a very unfortunate situation with a partner. And my younger sister actually has a developmental disability.
Okay.
So a lot of stuff needed to be tended to and taken care of in that regard. Mm-hmm. So I learned probably in my early to late teens that the system was really difficult for people to manage. And it was really hard on families. It was really hard on our family. It pretty much destroyed our family dynamic. Yeah. So I was very much like, this has to stop. I need to be a part of the solution here. I need to get out there and help people if I can. So that they don't have the same experience we did. Because unfortunately, our experience wasn't great with system navigation and the supports that were available at that time. So I knew probably in my early to late teens that I wanted to be a social worker.
Right. And so did this kind of because it is the healing through it, if you start your healing journeys, then maybe the family follows. Has it helped your family dynamic?
No.
Okay.
I think it's one of those things that change happens when people are ready.
Yeah, 100%.
And unfortunately for my family, there hasn't been a lot of embracing change or wanting change. So I've always been kind of called the black sheep of the family. Mm-hmm. So I've certainly taken on that label in my family. Been like, yeah, I'm doing things differently here. This isn't healthy. This isn't what I want for me or my family. Right. So I've taken a different route.
Right, and it's okay to do that.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's the reason I asked that question, because it's not always rainbows and butterflies after, you come out of these things. And it doesn't mean that you don't still have love for your family and they have love for you in your own ways, but it's about healing in yourself. And I just like that relation to other people.
Absolutely. And, I have people come to see me that are like, well, they're my family. And I'm like, well, there's blood relations for sure, and you can have love for them, but you can also have firm boundaries around what you will and won't accept in that relationship.
100%. And I mean, you can find your people, and family doesn't always have to be, we know that community.
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
Find, right? Community in like-minded people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I strongly encourage that in my personal and professional life. Let's go find some support. What does that look like for you? It doesn't necessarily just have to be family.
Right.
Blood relation family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, part of this group, the men's group I guess your hopes probably would be, is it something that you would encourage them to keep in touch with after? Is it kind of healthy that way, or is there boundaries around that as well?
You mean in terms of continuing to see someone after the group?
Yeah, like in some groups, I know it's, especially when it's more in a clinical setting, I guess, and I don't know if yours is, so maybe it's a good way to lead into that too. But yeah, the need to kind of keep your boundaries around each other's stories, and you know what I mean? Is this more about connection with other men, or is it more about self?
I would like to think it's both.
Okay.
I hear a lot of men struggle with isolation, and when we have the conversation around support, they don't have anyone or anything for the most part. So the hope is they will get that connection, but also I want men that are kind of contemplating change or contemplating therapy to come to the group and kind of experience it in a different way. And then if it feels right for them, I think therapy is beneficial to everybody in some way.
Yes.
So I'm hoping it's a gateway for them to be like, okay, there's further exploration that I need to do here. And I hope they feel supported enough to continue that, whether that be with me or someone else.
Right. Yeah, and that's awesome. I love that you're doing this, and like this is your very first sessions. Yeah. Do you have like what can they expect on the first day? Can you give a little snippet?
Yeah, so the first day is really just about building the rapport and relationship, and we're going to be talking about group guidelines, like kind of I don't like to use the word rules, but things that they're the boundaries of the group. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll brainstorm some ideas with them, but what are they hoping to kind of maintain as a group, and what do they need to make the environment feel safe and supported? And then what I'm going to do is kind of lead a brainstorming group, a brainstorming session around what are some topics and ideas that they want to hear about. Because I developed this group in collaboration with some other males, obviously.
Okay.
But I really want to give them the space to be like, well, you know what? I'm actually really curious about this. I'm really curious about that. And that's going to be the foundation for the last group, which will be those topics and questions that they had. I will spend the last group kind of answering and providing information around the things they mentioned on the first group.
Okay. And to see kind of where they've come, or what their thoughts, how they might have changed their perspectives.
Yes.
Yeah. And is there certain topics that you're going to highlight? Like, how do you get through certain emotions? The plan kind of, if it's okay to share that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's going to be 4 main topics, because the first one is really about the foundation, and the last one's about review and kind of summarizing things. So the topics are going to be healthy relationships, mental health, trauma, and how to identify and express emotions.
So, we were kind of talking a little bit about social media and how everyone's got their advice and is an expert per se. And, what is your opinion on that? And how can that be dangerous?
I think it can be dangerous in terms of not being diligent with it, right? Like, just being mindful of who is sending this message, who is putting this out there, what is their expertise, what is their training. The training piece, I think, is always a big thing. Not that I'm, an education snob by any means, but I think that when we see people coming forward and claiming to be life coaches, relationship coaches, and all these types of different coaches, and being an expert on all these different topics, how much do they actually know about it? Mm-hmm. Is it something that they've just read up on Google? Because that's always concerning, as we know, like Dr. Google, you don't want to do that for life stuff either, right?
Right.
So having a bit of a filter. So where is this message coming from? How did they come to this conclusion? And kind of, does the message, I think what really matters in terms of what you're adopting is, how does it resonate with you? Mm-hmm. So if it's resonating with you in a positive way, and it's providing growth and change, then by all means, why not? Where's the harm?
Right.
I think where it can be harmful is when you start the blame and shame game based on what other people are saying on the internet, right?
Right.
So oh, you know what, I see this person saying that this is the best way to parent, or this is the best way to support someone with addiction. Where is that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
any kind of criticism towards those types of things I would take very lightly and be like, what is this person actually talking about?
right. And even just personally, like I see a lot of things about what is a narcissist, and everybody seems to know what a narcissist is. And then other people, oh, you all have ADHD. And I'm not belittling either one of them, because if you have awareness around those things and you may think you have that, that's great. Like you said, if it resonates with you. But yeah, that's where I get concerned, if it can be very toxic.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there's certainly buzzwords and buzz things right now. Narcissism is definitely one of them. ADHD is one of them. And even autism has quite a few people come to me thinking, like, I might be on the scale for autism. And then when you throw in trauma, that complicates things even more. It's like, well, is this a disorder, or is this, a reaction to past trauma? Like,
exactly.
sussing that out is really tricky. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's anyway, I just find it fascinating. Like, I'll go down that rabbit hole, and like I even get sucked into it sometimes, and I'm like, okay, just, you gotta do your research.
Yeah.
Find out, even like you said, if that's gonna work for you, or if it's something that, it could be harmful to you. Maybe you need to eliminate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything that starts the blame and shame spiral, I would stay away from. Like,
mm-hmm.
if it's making you question or feel guilty or bad about yourself in any way, let's discard that and let's move on and find things that resonate with you around change and growth.
Yeah. See ya.
Yeah, exactly.
So this has been awesome. I mean, you're just such a wonderful person. You've got such a neat energy, and I'm grateful that you took the time to be on the show. And I really am hoping that we can get the word out. And like I said, if it's not for this next session, that we can make it something regular for you, and get the word out for men. And can you give us some more information about times and how to register and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so it starts, like I said, Tuesdays for 6 weeks, starting January 16th. It goes from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. It'll be in person at our offices in Douglas Glen and Calgary.
Okay.
To register, you can just go to the website, www.exhale-psychology.ca. And there's a book now option. You can just click on that and select the group and register yourself.
Okay.
The cost is it is $500.
Right.
But because of I'm a registered social worker and an MSW, most insurance companies will just reimburse for this. So
nice.
It's a little bit of an upfront. Yeah, it's a little bit of an upfront investment for you, but we'll issue insurance receipts after every session that you can submit to insurance.
I got all the chills on that one, because that's honestly what I find one of the biggest barriers why people do not seek help, is because it's, sometimes the things that are given to you, or the resources available, you don't have it. You don't have the access to it.
Yeah.
So that's good news. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We wanted it to be accessible.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I ask everybody this question, but what is the last best thing that you do before you go to bed?
Oh, I'm really big into, and I know this seems silly, but this is my self-care. I'm really big into my skincare routine at night.
Yes.
So just washing the day off and moisturizing and listening to music while I do it. And then I go and I put on cuticle cream and hand lotion, and I just crawl into bed and take that moment to just kind of decompress, to kind of do some mindfulness. That's my best. That's how I end the day.
Very nice. That sounds lovely.
Yeah,
it does. And I love everybody's answers, because there's just one woman she plays a game on her phone, and she almost felt shame and guilt for that. And I'm like, no, this is good.
Yeah.
If it helps you to do it, then that's, it keeps you in that, it gets you ramped down for the day and ready for some sleep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, where do we find you on Instagram? What is your handle?
I'm melanie.yyc.therapist.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, so we can find you there and on your website. I'll have all those links up in all of my stuff. And yeah, again, I really appreciate you meeting you. It was lovely to meet you this morning. Started my day off
It's
just
lovely
perfect.
to meet you too, Carrie.
Yeah.
Oh, me too. I really enjoyed this, and I really enjoyed following you on Instagram. So
Thank you. You too.
I'm glad we met.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Carry On with Carrie podcast. I appreciate you guys listening and taking the time to learn just a little bit more about mental health and advocacy and wellness and all that good stuff. Yeah, today was a great interview, great conversation. And yeah, if I'm available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. You can also find me on Instagram at Carry On with Carrie _ podcast or Carry On with Carrie podcast on Facebook. Yeah, if hopefully we can get this message out, make talking about this, our brains a little bit more normal, end the stigma again, and let's just try to help one more person at a time.